All right. This is being recorded. I'm sure you guys all got that. That's just in case other people have questions and they couldn't come to this, since we are going to go through some sort of logistical things and helpful things. And so my name is Evan. I'm the current student rep for ASB, and I go to the University of Virginia. And I use he, him, or they, them pronouns. Both work for me. And so we're going to get started here today. I'm going to run through quickly a little bit of what is a student chapter and how do you make one, just sort of to get some of those logistics out of the way. And then we've got 3 of our current student chapter presidents here with us to share a little bit about what they've been up to over the last year, how they got their chapter started, and sort of just give us an update from 3 of them. And then we have Dr. DeVita here. As you already saw, he's got this awesome belt buckle. He's going to talk a little bit about National Biomechanics Day and student chapters, and whatever other interesting things he's got for us today, as he so frequently does. At the end, we'll definitely have time for questions to all 4 of our panelists, as well as hopefully there will be some time at the end to just sort of mix and meet some new people, and talk to some people you haven't talked to yet before. And if we run out of time because we started a couple minutes behind, or we don't have enough time, there's definitely lots of opportunities in spatial chat. Spatial chat's open all week. Also, if you're on the ASB student Slack, feel free to ask questions or talk in there about what spatial chat you're in if you're trying to get in touch with anybody else. So cool. So without further ado, we'll see here. I think I can. Perfect. All right. So welcome to the Student Chapters Meeting. It's the first annual one, so we'll see how it goes. And so I figured a good place to start probably is just so like, what's the purpose of student chapters, right? So why did the executive board even decide to do this and start this initiative within our society? And so the primary thing we want to do is to bring people together. We're trying to make connections between all the biomechanics people at your institution, and then across different universities as well. And so we're bringing people together. We also want to make sure that we're providing intellectual and professional development across all the disciplines that feed into biomechanics, right? Because everybody has something they can bring to the table and offer, and you're going to get a new perspective when you meet all these different people. And so after that, one of the goals from the executive board also is the hope that the student chapters will help promote the long-term growth of the society, because they do recognize that the student body is the future of the society. And so we're trying to make sure that we're supporting all the students and helping everybody as best we can. And then finally, it is also another opportunity to construct an environment where all students can gain leadership skills, make new friends, and meet new collaborators as well. So that's sort of the idea behind this and why we got this started in the first place. And so if this still seems like something that would be interesting, the next question probably is, how do you do this, right? Right, we're finishing up our first official year, 2 years if you include the pilot schools. And so we're still very new. So how do you do this? And so clearly it's possible. We're up to 9 chapters thus far. There are all those logos right there. And so how do you do this? A good place to start is to go on the ASB website, and you can find the Constitution and the application to become a student chapter. And so just reading through that stuff is probably a good place to get started, get into more of the nitty-gritty details. And then find your biomechanics friends, right? So who would you want to be in this club at your school anyway? And talk to them and see if you can get some ideas together about who that might be. And right, so you're going to try to get some ideas about what you'd want to be, what you would want to do as your chapter, who you'd want to be in your chapter. Where are all those different biomechanics labs at your school? Are they over in BME? Are they just in mech? Are they in physiology and biology? Or where are they? And sort of learn about that. And so when you got some ideas, write them all down in the application. The application hopefully walks you through some of these things. So that might be a good idea to download it at the top. When you've got this all together, or as you're going through this process, definitely feel free to reach out to the student rep, who at the moment is me and will be for another year. So feel free to reach out with any questions along the way, and then definitely send me your application when you've got it done, because the final step will be to forward it to the rest of the executive board for final approval. And so that's sort of the logistics of why we're here and how you can make a new chapter. And so we've also got Oliver Silverson from Minnesota here, and along with Sarah Barron from Florida and Morgan Dahlman from our North Carolina joint chapter, here to talk about what they've been doing over the last year. And then, as we said, Dr. DeVita is here as well, and he will talk a little bit more about National Biomechanics Day and student chapters after that. So Oliver, if Oliver wants to lead off, simply because I put him first on the list. So I stop sharing and can have the floor.
All right. Thank you very much, Evan. I appreciate it. My name is Oliver. I'm representing the University of Minnesota. I'm in a biomechanics PhD program here under Paul Ludwig, studying the shoulder. And we share a joint lab within the med school here with the spine researchers as well. And then as more and more students from different disciplines have come into the lab or touched on some of the faculty members of the lab from various parts of the school, we've started to reach out and realize that our biomechanics friends are far and wide across various schools in the University of Minnesota and campuses. And just kind of thinking one day that maybe it would be nice to get all of us in one place at one time, maybe not physically, but at least get our ideas in one shared space was really interesting. And then a couple of cross-listed classes ended up kind of meeting those people in person. This would be pre-2020. And we got to meet up, and then, 2020 was what it was, and we were all remote, and we had some extra time on our hands, and this call for student chapters came out. So we revisited those, put out the feeler to see if it would be a good idea, and it was. And we kind of recruited that way to get our basis of personnel, held a small election, wrote up a constitution, grabbed some faculty support, and very similarly to how we were surprised at how many biomechanics interested departments and divisions there were across the university, there were a ton of ASB connections across the university, some of which from retired professors who kind of came out of the woodwork a little bit, but got amazing, overwhelmingly positive faculty support for developing something here, which was really nice. And that, again, spread across departments. And it's been fun so far. And to me, it was new, but we connected with wearables and technology through dentistry, through the med school, through animal science, which was really fun for some of us. So here we are learning about new departments and then more faculty members, and it's kind of diversified our little core curriculum. So it's been really positive for us. We're very fresh. I think our approval was in February. And we're looking to kind of grow our chapter a little bit more this year. So if I hopefully touched on everything, and maybe I can expand on more, but I'm excited to kind of talk about the highs and lows of how that went.
Sorry, microphones. Awesome, cool. That seems like it summed it up pretty good. So thanks so much for that. And then I believe Sarah is up next if she's ready for that. And I have her slides, if that works, because she's got some photographs. Cool. Awesome. Go for it.
All right. Hi, everyone. As Evan said, I'm Sarah, and I'm a third-year PhD candidate in biomedical engineering at the University of Florida. I was the vice president of our ASB chapter for the first year and a half, so I was very involved in getting our chapter up and running, and now I'm the president for the upcoming year. You can go to the next slide. So I wanted to start with the past year and highlight just a few of the events that we put on that I would say were some of our most successful events, and then I'll talk about our plans kind of moving forward. So UF was one of the pilot chapters. So we got our official chapter approval in February of 2020. So all of the events in our first full year, so fall 2020 to spring 2021, were virtual. Go to the next slide.
Sorry, that's my bad.
So starting with professional development type events, we had three sort of dissemination focused events. So in the fall, we did a podium/poster presentation workshop right before the ASB annual meeting. And then in the spring, we first had a writing panel, which I'll talk about more And then we followed that up with an abstract writing workshop just before the ASB abstract deadline for this year's meeting. But out of those 3 events, our writing panel involved the most planning and had the largest attendance, so I wanted to kind of focus on that. So in selecting the faculty for the panel, we wanted to have representation from different stages of the academic career path, as well as from all of the different departments that our members came from. So we're primarily made up of biomedical engineering students, but we have some mechanical engineering and applied physiology and kinesiology students as well. We also strategically picked 2 faculty members whose research focus was either biomechanics or biomechanics adjacent, but whose students weren't already members of our chapter, and that worked well to help grow our group a bit more. And then once we had our faculty, it was a really simple event to run. We sent out a Google form beforehand to get questions from our chapter members, and also allowed questions to be asked in the chat during the Zoom call. And then our past president, Rachel, was our moderator. And we had really great discussions on everything from grant applications to responding to reviewer comments to picking what journal to publish in. Go to the next slide. So for outreach type events, we really wanted to do multiple events, but because of COVID, we pivoted and put all of our effort into National Biomechanics Day, which was okay because we put together a really awesome event. So in past years for National Biomechanics Day, UF has brought students to campus from a nearby school about 10-ish minutes away to participate in demos and things. But because we were doing it virtually, we had the opportunity to partner with a more underrepresented school about 3 hours away from campus. And there were 2 STEM teachers at the school who let us take over their whole class period for a whole week. So every day we had about a 15-minute interactive lecture, and then we shipped them some supplies and instructions for activities related to each day's material. So we had them do some hypothesis testing related to jumping, measure gait parameters after walking on rolls of paper with chalk on their shoes, and build antagonistic muscle systems with popsicle sticks and balloons, just to name a few of the activities. But the event went really well. We had a pre-quiz and a post-quiz for the students to complete, and they all learned a lot. There was 75% improvement in correct answers from pre to post. And we also asked them some survey questions at the end and got positive feedback. So we had things on the survey like, I enjoyed Biomechanics Week, and learning about biomechanics made me more interested in science. And on all the survey elements, over 60% of the students put that they agreed or strongly agreed, which was really awesome to see. And our plan is to keep a virtual component to all of our National Biomechanics Days moving forward so that we can keep reaching more students throughout the state. You go to the next slide. And then moving forward, fingers crossed, everything will get to happen in person. You can go to the next slide. So each semester, we want to have at least 1 professional development event, 1 outreach event, and 1 social event. So we have those kind of mapped out here for fall and spring. And then at UF, we've had biweekly biomechanics journal clubs running for a while, but our plan is to have ASB take over one of those journal clubs each month and provide coffee and snacks to improve attendance. And then we also have a biomechanics / neuromechanics seminar series that occurs kind of sporadically, put on by one of our faculty members. But our chapter got to nominate 2 speakers to bring in, which we're really excited about, and we're hoping to provide some networking opportunities to our members with our selected speakers. But we're really excited for the coming year. This was kind of the structure that we wanted to have last year, and obviously we had to scale back. So we're excited to try to grow our group more. Until now, we've also been a grad student only chapter, but this year we're going to open up to undergrads as well. And we're also currently going through the process of becoming an official student org at UF and putting together our website and social media pages, which I think will be very useful for expanding our reach moving forward. And that's all I've got.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That sounds really cool. Certainly with all the cool things you did for Virtual Biomechanics Day. That was awesome. Cool. And so then our 3rd president is Morgan Dahlman, and she is from the North Carolina Joint Chapter. So there's actually more than 1 school in her chapter, and she's going to talk about that.
Hi, everyone. So like Evan said, my name is Morgan, and I'm the president of the North Carolina Joint Chapter. So right now, our chapter houses both NC State and UNC Chapel Hill. So we, as as schools came together, we have a joint BME program between the schools, which help facilitate the beginning of our joint chapter. So we have faculty and students on both sides that make up our chapter, and we just got approval, similar to Oliver, in the spring. So we're a brand new chapter and we're super excited. So we went through all the processes of beginning the chapter. So for us, it was doing everything that ASB needed. So filling out the application, making the constitution. But then logistically for us, most of our efforts went into determining how logistically we'll hold the joint chapter. So where that student chapter organization will be held, will each school have their own? Will we house it under one school? How will we logistically communicate between schools? So pretty much the summer has been us figuring out those logistics, but we're super excited to get started here in the fall. And we have our first large meeting coming up in the end of August. So we're super excited to see what this new chapter brings, who we can all bring together, especially being between schools.
Awesome. Cool. So as you can see, we've got people at various stages of getting started and doing things, even bringing schools together, which is awesome. And so one of the big components of doing all this, Sarah even touched on it, is certainly outreach, right? How do we bring biomechanics to more people that haven't heard of biomechanics? And one of the most awesome people that has done tons of this is our own Paul DeVita, and we were lucky enough to stag him for a couple minutes to tell us how we can outreach, I think most specifically to high school students, but my guess is techniques can be applied elsewhere. Up to you, Paul.
Thank you, Evan. I'm intrigued by what Morgan just said about having a multi-school chapter. And I am just 2 hours down the road at East Carolina University. So Morgan, I wonder if it would be interesting for us to join forces a little bit and to have some of our students participate in your event. I don't want to put you on the spot, but let's think about that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Here's an interesting thing about what I've been doing with National Biomechanics Day, and that is that it is so popular among you, younger people in biomechanics. And I graduated and started working some weeks ago. And so having been in my day, no one ever thought about outreach. No one ever even mentioned the word. And the word STEM, for example, that abbreviation did not exist even. And so through the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, we were just sort of on our own. And it's only in recent years that our field, for example, kinesiology or biomechanics or biomedical engineering, is really considering these larger, these bigger impact events of these outreach activities and how it can change the world. So first, I am very grateful to all the young people in biomechanics who have embraced National Biomechanics Day and even other outreach events. So for those of you who don't know, what is National Biomechanics Day? It is an attempt to improve and increase the impact of our work of biomechanics on the world, on society. And as I was thinking a few years ago, one thing that is missing in biomechanics is younger people. That biomechanics is not taught at even, or there are no biomechanics programs at the undergraduate level anywhere in the United States, except now we have one with Nick Sturgeon at Nebraska does one. But it is so unfamiliar to so many students at the undergraduate level, and it is even more unfamiliar to everyone in high school. Like no high school students take biomechanics courses anywhere, and this is practically worldwide. So it was my idea that if we can entice and excite younger high school students about biomechanics, then more would come to university thinking, maybe I'll do biomechanics. You know, biomechanics, that's pretty cool. And we would have more people making a bigger impact. And my saying is, if you saw the my introduction to Steve Messier at the Borelli. NBD has a number of expressions. We try to make them all fun, but one of them is that biomechanics helps people. And ultimately, that is the source of our greatness, all of us, is that we help people in really fantastic ways. We improve the quality of life of so many people. So I created National Biomechanics Day, and National Biomechanics Day has been run since 2016. We've reached over 30,000 high school students. And by the way, I am giving clues for trivia questions with some of these statements, as I was instructed to do. And so the purpose? Increase awareness among high school students. Wait, I'm looking at the questions. And we are, National Biomechanics Day is now a subsidiary of our not-for-profit, tax-exempt organization called the Biomechanics Initiative. So write those things down and you'll do well on the trivia contest. All right, but more importantly, it is part of your role as chapters to perform some form of service. And so I am suggesting, and we've had great success, that you participate in National Biomechanics Day. We always have an official day, NBD. It's always an early day in April. Next year, it is April 6th. And many people hold NBD events with high school kids in their labs, showing them the greatness of biomechanics. We try to make it fun and exciting, and it is for all these kids. So all that's fine, but many people and schools cannot do it on that particular day. So it's almost like National Biomechanics Day season. And it runs sort of from late March to sort of late May. And there's still a few events coming up. And I know there's an event in September. So while there's a specific day, it really is whatever you can do. And what is the essence of National Biomechanics Day? Well, in non-pandemic times, the essence is inviting high school kids to your labs and showing them all the fun in biomechanics, showing them 3D motion capture, which they will go wild about, showing them isokinetic dynamometry, showing them electromyography. And what happens with all of these activities is it always turns into some contest. So with EMG, I know a lot of NBD sites have arm wrestling competitions with electrodes on both people's biceps. And the EMG traces on the screen, and the kids are trying to create a larger EMG compared to the other. Isokinetic, who's the strongest? So it always kind of comes into this contest, but that's the fun part of biomechanics. And that's what we have over, let's pick an area, geology. You know, they look at rocks. Or how about chemistry? They work with test tubes and they go like this. Oh, okay, fine. But we do 3D motion capture of people running and jumping and doing all kinds of great things. How about 3D motion capture in your lab of a sword fight, of a fencing match, since we just saw fencing on the Olympics last week. So it is so enjoyable for people. If STEM is going to be successful, we promote that biomechanics is the perfect STEM vehicle. It has science, technology, engineering, math. And actually, we do a lot of dance biomechanics, and that is part of STEAM. And the world of dance science has latched on to STEM. And so STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And so a lot of people do dance biomechanics. And we have a subsidiary called NB Dance for National Biomechanics Day. Finally, I would like to point out my friend Obina Fidelis, who I see sitting here. Obina is from Nigeria and works in Nigeria as a biomechanist. And I'm happy to say that he was the recipient of one of our grant programs this year. We ran for the first time, and let me premise this with, we have been raising money for 5 years, and now I feel that we have enough money where we can give back to the biomechanics community. So we developed a number of grant programs. One of them was to help Black biomechanists in conjunction with the Black Biomechanics Association. And Obina applied and he got one of the grants. And I was really happy about that because we're ASB, United States of America mostly, but it really was worldwide. And so Obina, I was glad that we had a person in Nigeria getting one of these grants, and he had a great NBD event. We have had grant programs for women biomechanists, for economically challenged programs in Australia, for a program in Brazil. Next year, we will work with Latinx to produce a program with them. They came out just after we announced our program, so we didn't work with them this year, but next year we will work with them. And okay, NBD, something to think about, an outreach event that is worldwide and that people like. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Paul.
Welcome.
So that was really helpful. And so that was sort of the idea. Is we just got some brief updates, and you've heard from who these people are. And so if anybody has any questions for the panelists, you're welcome to raise your hand and ask them out loud, or type them in the chat, and I will relay them as we go here. But mostly this time is supposed to be for you guys. It should be useful. There are also, I can see a couple other chapter presidents and participants in the room. So if we get to a question that you haven't heard, somebody might have the answer. There might be other people in the room that can answer. And so we're going to do that for a little bit if there are questions. And if not, we'll just, go into breakout rooms. So I guess I did have one question for Morgan. Sounds like Paul might have a similar one too. So what was the hardest thing logistically trying to bring the two schools together? If you had to pick just one.
I don't know if there was necessarily something that was hard, and I know that sounds kind of, but the schools had already established, like I said, a joint BME program. So a lot of faculty knew each other, and the faculty are actually the ones I feel like brought the idea to us. They saw the call for student chapters, and each faculty member reached out to their students, and students they knew that were interested in biomechanics or doing biomechanics research, to see if there was a group of us that would want to start a student chapter in a joint one. So it was pretty easy for us all to kind of get together because most of our faculty knew each other, so we kind of knew each other. I would say logistically, we just had to make sure that we could combine the student organization and be able to communicate across the campuses. So each school has a different way of setting up their student organization and different parameters. And so it was trying to decide, do we have separate student organizations for each school, and then we're just classified as an ASB joint chapter, or do we house the chapter under just one school that allows us to have outside school members?
Cool. I have not seen any questions, and so maybe I'm bad at reading the chat. Looks like Patrick has a hand up, maybe not.
Yeah, I was going to ask, so we've got 9 chapters right now within the ASB, which is really, really exciting to see, considering how new this student effort is. In the remaining tenure that you have as a student representative, how large do you want to see this? Do you have a number of chapters that you want to see by the time you hang up your hat as a student chapter or as a student rep? And what are the ways that, we as the ASB student members can help you get there?
Wow, question for me. Yeah, so I guess I wouldn't say so much as a specific number by a specific time. Maybe I think it'd be awesome to have 20 or 25 at least in the works this year, because that seems like it might be, I feel like we need to get to a large enough number to sort of reach a critical mass of, right, they're sort of doing things, but there are other chapters that they can reach out to or chapters nearby. That's somewhat of an arbitrary number. I think one thing that might be really important is sort of geographic coverage of student chapters. We don't have tons from out west as it stands. And we don't have tons at primarily undergraduate institutions, which was one of the original goals from the previous student rep. I admit I've taken a sort of different approach in getting grad students to start first and then inviting undergrads to join once they've gotten started. We'll see how that goes. That doesn't have to be the way. So if there are undergrads here, I believe actually Tristan might be. I think Iowa's is a primarily undergraduate chapter. And so that's awesome. They're our newest one. They got in right under the wire. They got in last week. So that was pretty cool to add one more going right into the conference. If you ask Nick Sturgio, he wants one at every school in the United States, not in the United States, everywhere that does biomechanics. So there's certainly no upper limit on how many student chapters can join the student chapter of American Society of Biomechanics. The limiting factor might just be, do you have a faculty member that is a member of ASB to support you in that endeavor? From you guys, I think a thing is just staying involved and staying responsive. Right, we've got channels on Slack, so the presidents can talk to each other, so all members of chapters can talk to each other sort of throughout the year. And also definitely feel free to do things without me. If there are nearby chapters or somebody you meet at a conference is at another chapter and you guys want to get your two chapters together to do a journal club or practice presentations or something, just to, share between your two schools, I say go for it. That would be really awesome, I think, and just having more things be able to sort of be that way, I think would be a really good thing. So if a couple of those happen before I'm done at the end of NACOB, I would say that's a roaring success. Cool. Any other questions?
I did have one question.
Sure, shoot.
It was kind of directed more towards Sarah, just because you were able to do some of the virtual lessons and that sort of thing. I was curious how you got started even planning, like I'm assuming you could obviously do those lessons in person as well, but then transfer it to virtual, and like how you came up with those lesson plans and knew it was good for that age group, but also informative and that sort of thing, that process.
Luckily at UF, we have someone who is in charge of outreach with surrounding schools. So we were able to get connected with that person, and she did a lot of the grunt work, finding the middle school that we could work with and getting those teachers on board. And then as far as lesson planning, we looked a lot at what our state guidelines are for things that science classes need to teach, because it was a lot easier to convince teachers to let us in their classroom if we were hitting those guidelines and they weren't wasting a whole week of classes. And then we just did things that each of us was passionate about. So someone was doing gates, so they put together our gate activity. We had someone more passionate in sports biomechanics put together a more sports focused activity. And then it all just kind of came together that way.
Sweet, thank you, I appreciate that.
I think one thing that possibly could be added too is if you know the person at your school that can reach out, knows which schools, that's awesome too. But it could also be good to keep in mind that your professors live in your town and have lived there or nearby for probably a while. And so it's possible that some of them have children that go to schools. So they might know some other science teachers and stuff in your area as well.
Yeah, in past years, that's how we have gotten schools until we found our magic person is faculty, biomechanics faculty members whose kids were in school. We got their schools on board. So that's another good way to do it.
Thought I saw John's box light up. Did John have a question? Or oh, we've got one more. If John doesn't have a question. Okay, so we have one from David. What is the general frequency of scheduled events for ASB chapter events? Do you aim for a few big events every semester or many smaller events? There's a Oliver or Sarah or Morgan. Would you like to take this, or I can get started?
I think since we're in our infancy right now, we're planning this as a executive board of our own chapter, and we're aiming for at least, you got to start low. I think is kind of what we're learning. Maybe one a semester. we do come together for National Biomechanics Day. So there's our spring event, but it would be really great to meet off cycle in the fall. The fall, I don't know, everybody's a little different, but the fall tends to be a little busier than the spring for us. And then the spring you get the senioritis and the weather turns nice. In Minnesota, the weather turns nice and nobody, you lose people. So I think our fall is, we're trying to get something while everybody's back to campus and excited to be here. Assuming we're back on campus, it would be probably one a semester from us. That's our hope.
I'll add on to that a little bit. It's a lot more challenging in the virtual space to get people together because they're tired of Zoom and they just don't want to show up. So that's something to definitely keep in mind moving forward with frequency is events that are in person, people are a lot more excited to come to, and you don't want to overwhelm people with virtual events.
And I will comment on Oliver's statement that they don't want to overdo it. And it is good, I think, to have one event per year, possibly one per semester, but even that sounds to me to be overdone slightly, especially in that you all have your degree requirements to meet. You're all trying to graduate. So to do one event so successfully and well would be more valuable than to do several events that were not as good.
Yeah, and I think it might be important to note too and Oliver can jump in if there's something more specific for Minnesota. I know here at Virginia, we certainly, National Biomechanics Day is our big event, like outreach event, but other times we get together as chapters, right? I think Sarah mentioned this as well. They're journal clubs, right? Those are like, right, low cost, low effort as well, activities to do sort of to keep the chapter itself, right? So to keep the students together involved. And right, so some of those can be social. We found journal clubs pretty good because we've got sort of very different arms of biomechanics at Virginia. And so hearing from different or going to read a paper that you wouldn't have otherwise come across. And that's also just to wrap that one up. There's certainly no rule from ASB about how many times your chapter has to meet. If you start getting really big, it might be good for your executive board to meet more frequently. So there's like a plan, but there's no rule. And so as much as is useful is sort of the hope. I think, cool. And Tristan's had his hand up. So if we hadn't already covered it.
Yeah, I was just more curious. I heard from a couple of the presidents talking about outreach. Is there a specific age that we should be looking at for the students that we're presenting to? Like I know, Sarah, I think you mentioned middle school students, but then Paul said something about high school. Has anybody noticed a difference between the two, or which one we should look at reaching out to first?
So high school is the target audience for National Biomechanics Day. We do have faculty members at UF that are very passionate about the research that has shown that kids make the decision on whether or not they want to pursue a STEM degree when they're in middle school, or whether they pursue interest in STEM in middle school. So we're moving forward. We really want to kind of target both of those audiences for that reason. But we had middle school access this year, so that's what we just kind of rolled with.
And your program, Sarah, has a bit of a history working with elementary school, 6th graders or so in your NBD events, and they have been great. So I think it's more, I targeted high schoolers. The average age of all 30,000, as far as we know from our demographics, is 16.5 years, 10th grade or something like that. But there are events that use college kids or serve college kids and that serve elementary schools. And I do a local event at a local primary school for 5th grade in their science fair. And it's National Biomechanics Day. And whether they're young or old, if you make it fun for them, they like it.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I would add the biggest thing is just scaling your activities to keep it interesting for the age group that you're bringing in. It's a lot different bringing in elementary schoolers versus targeting middle schoolers versus high schoolers.
All right. Awesome. I think we have all the questions that currently people have signaled in any way they would like to ask. So we've got a couple minutes left. I thought it would be a good idea to just do some breakout rooms and mix it up. So you're certainly welcome. We'll probably stop the recording here. But so we're going to do that, and we'll send you guys all off. If you want to stay and meet and chat a little bit, go for it. If not, that's totally up to you. So there we go. All right, so we'll just do breakout rooms, and we'll just say, yeah, see if we can find, say create. All right, and so just have some fun chats. If other questions come up, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I'll likely be in the NBD spatial chat throughout the conference, as well as Twitter and email, and there are lots of ways to contact me. So just go for it, whatever is most convenient to you.